Good morning, dear friends. Today we have a presentation from a very good and long friend, Claude Arpi. Please allow me to introduce Claude Arpi briefly. Claude Arpi is a French-born author, journalist, historian, and tibetologist. He is the author of Fate of Tibet, When Big Insects Eat Small Insects, and Glimpses of Tibetan History. He has numerous articles on Tibet, China, India, and Indo-French relations. He is the director of Tibet Pavilion in Auroville, also named Pavilion of Tibetan Culture. The pavilion was inaugurated by His Holiness see the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Hey. Thanks for the introduction. Our friend and author, Mr. Claude Arpi, is being requested to use half an hour for the presentation, followed by a question from the floor. Thank you. Mr. Claude Arpi, would you mind please begin?
Thank you. I want to very grateful to TPI to have invited me, particularly to my very old friend Thupten Sampala, that Thupten Sampala visited us in Auroville in 1985 on the occasion of the International Youth Year. He was the first Tibetan delegate in Auroville. So since then we have been in contact, and I'm very grateful for inviting me, and I'm grateful to Sonamla for sharing that session, and Setana to have organized my trip in Dharamsala. So I will be very brief because Chairman said I have only half an hour, and I have a small problem. So I left my glasses to see from far in the hotel, so I have to come close to see what is written here. So I will speak about the leadership change and what is the implication for Tibet. So this, I will skip few of the things, otherwise you may not have your lunch, which is not very good. So that's the structure of the Chinese Communist Party as well as the government. Now, you know, this time there's only 7 members of the Standing Committee of the Politburo, but for Tibet the most important person is the number 4, who is the chairman of the PCC, Yu Changcheng, who really look after Tibetan affairs, and who had visited in 1 year since the election and the 18th Congress. He has visited already 3 times Tibet and what China calls the Tibetan inhabited area. So Yu Changcheng is, and at the same time, he is the chairman of the small group, small Tibet work group, and I will come to it later. The State Council, I pass also very quickly, 1 premier, 4 vice premier, and one lady who had been also involved in Tibet, and 5 state councillors. Now the main decision for all the Tibet policy since 1980, since Deng Xiaoping came into power, and since he met Mr. Jaludondup in 79, and the first delegation went in 79, the main decision are taken in a work forum, and it consists of all the standing committee members, Politburo, people from the PLA, people from the PAP, local cadres. So it's a large gathering of 200-300 people who take really the decision for the following 5 or 10 years. The first work forum occurred in March of 1980. It means it was about 3 months before the visit to Hu Haobang, the General Secretary to Tibet, in which he brought very new policy which has been relatively favorable. It's one of the few periods which have been very favorable to the Tibetan after the visit of General Secretary Hu Haobang. So the most recent one in January 2010, and I think today China still follow, despite the last year, the 18th Congress leadership change, still follow the policy of the 5th Tibet Work Forum. No. So I will not go into detail of the 5th, but basically it was to strengthen the party organization at the local village, at the local level, mainly in the villages and the monastery, as well as in town like Lhasa and Chigatse, where they put this grid. They've sent a lot of cadres in the villages for a few months to teach people what is the party and how good the party is. So I will leave all these detail with Kongo Sabala, but I think most of you already know. Actually, they had mentioned that they would send about 24,000 cadres to the Tibetan village. But recently, last month, I read an article in the China Tibet Online that they have sent 60,000 cadres to indoctrinate or to teach the good thing that the party is doing for Tibetan. So I think never since the Cultural Revolution there have been so much indoctrination and so much effort from the party leadership to really go to the grassroots level, because they always speak about stability. Stability means that unless in the grassroots level, it means at the level of the village, at the level of the household in the cities, at the level of the monasteries, there's a full control, not only of the communication, of the internet, of people, what each person, individual is doing. If they don't, not able to monitor, they are afraid that the incident of 2008, March, April 2008, the riots and the demonstration all over Tibet could occur again. So they want to find a way to prevent this. So they believe that in indoctrinating at the grassroots level, this could change. The main basis for the 5th work forum was stability. Stability means controlling what is happening. Now, once these decisions are taken in a work forum, they have to be implemented. And as you know, China, the Communist Party, is using these small groups. These small groups help coordinating different ministries who are dealing with one issue. Now, last third plenum, which ended 2 days back, the Central Committee, I mean the 205 members of the Central Committee, have decided to set up 2 new work forums. One is for reform, economic reform, not political or social reform. One is economic reform, and the second one is a national security board for national security small group to monitor all the demonstration, all the riots, all the disturbance which could happen, the law and order problem all over. So it will have certainly a lot of repercussion also for Tibet, in the sense that for the first time in a small group, we are not sure who will be the chairman of that small group, but they will include the PLA, the PAP, the PSB, and all the different organization of the party who are dealing with law and order. So in our case, in case of Tibet, that Central Tibet Work Coordination Group shared by Yu Changchang is the main group who deals and takes decision. So like very often in China, the composition is secret. Once or twice they mention in the press that Yu Changchang was the chairman, but we don't know as yet who are the other members. So I did some guessing work. The chairman used to be Gyalisen, the chairman of the CPPCC, now it's Yu Changchang. Always the Ministry of Public Security is represented. So Meng Jianghu, who was already in the previous small group on Tibet, will be probably. Gao Zhilong, who was posted in Tibet as deputy secretary a few years back, is now party secretary for Beijing, maybe in it. Makai, who's been looking after development, is probably in it. And Ling Jihua, who looks after, with the director of the United Front. And other member, I just guess, Zhang Yixiong, who replaced Xu Weixiong as the person who deals directly with His Holiness and Envoy. So it's just guessing work. So I did my own small group on Tibet, but it's still secret and very few people, I think, in China know who are they. But for sure there is people from the PLA and PAP, and General Wang Xiangping, who has been posted in Tibet a few years back as the director of the commander of the PAP, is now overall China commanding the PAP. So he's certainly in it. And General Yang Jishan is now been transferred in Chengdu as deputy commander, but he was earlier commander of the Tibet district military area. So he is a member of the Central Committee, is very powerful. He is someone who will make it probably in a few years in the in Politburo, so he is certainly in it. And maybe because all, as you know, the minority, what the China calls the minority, have not much say usually in China. But one of the person from a minority, Wang Shengwei, who is in charge of Minister of Ethnic Minorities, is a Hui, from Hui nationality. He visited Tibet, so I have recently, 3-4 months ago, he visited Tibet. So it makes me think that he might be also in that. Now the day-to-day affairs, once the small committee has taken decision how to implement it, is left with United Front. So now here you see that the new person, Zhang, who is replacing Xu Weixiong, and we will probably deal with the Tibetan envoys if there is any negotiation. Of course, always the Chinese Panchen Lama, Gyalisen Norbu, as well as Reting Rinpoche is involved. And there's one Tibetan, Gompo Tashi, who is alternate member of the Central Committee, who is one of the senior-most Tibetan and young Tibetan in charge of the United Front, is also probably. And Sitar, who is based in Panchen, who used to be based in Switzerland, and who speaks German, is recently has been visiting also Tibet, so he's one of the main person. Ling Jihua, he was supposed to become a member of the Politburo. He was one of the favorite, very close to Hu Jintao. Unfortunately, his son had a Ferrari. It's a very strange son of a senior cadre with a Ferrari, and he had an accident, and he got killed, and one of the girls, 2 Tibetan girls were with him, and he got demoted, and the demotion is to be the director of the United Front. So once he visited Tibet this year, but I don't think because of what happened, they will not forgive him that incident, because on the top of that he tried to hide the facts that his son had an accident. So it was one way to get rid of him, and unfortunately it's a very important post in the United Front which deals with Tibet affair. So as I mentioned, Yu Chengcheng, he has been now a very important member of the Standing Bureau. He is a developer, he is from Shanghai. He did a lot of good work according to Chinese characteristic in Shanghai. So many people believe that he really wants to do development in Tibet. He tries to solve the issue of Tibet using more and more development, which may not solve at all, but it's another issue. Yu Chang, sorry, excuse me. He is also a member of the Central Committee. Central Committee members are very powerful because when there is a plenum, they are giving the direction. Even suppose the General Secretary Xi Jinping wants to go in certain direction, and if is not followed by the 205 members, or if there is dissension or power struggle within, so he won't be able to implement. So Zhang hopefully will meet His Holiness representative, but I don't know when, and I don't know if you have decided who will be the next envoy. But when Yu Chengcheng visited in early August, he visited Lhasa for 6 days, he accompanying him. So if you look at the composition of the delegation, there was Sitar, there was Zhang, and there was Vice Minister for Transport because they want to do new road, new airport, and there was the chairman of the China electricity grid because most probably they want to do more dams, and the grid will be very important. If they produce electricity with dams on the Yalong-Sampo or other rivers in Tibet, that electricity will have to be exported to the mainland. Wang Huning is I think he is a very important person, though he has never been much in the news, but he has been advising and writing speeches for Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao, and now for Xi Jinping. When Xi Jinping went to Kanchu, means just at the few 100 kilometers from La Blanc Tachikil, he was accompanying him. When Xi Jinping went to America to meet Obama in California, Wang Huning was accompanying him. He is a member of the Politburo, and I read yesterday some rumor that he may become the National Security Advisor. And another thing, that Wang Huning is member of the Tibet delegation. You know, there's a Tibet delegation going every year to the NPC, the National People's Congress. So there are people who are not Tibetan. Hu Jintao was one of that. Hu Jintao was going part of the Tibet delegation to the NPC. So Wang Huning is part of the Tibet delegation. So is someone really to follow what he's doing and where he's appearing to, maybe it will give some indication. One of the most powerful departments is the General Office Department of the Communist Party, and now Liu Jiangshu is the director. So he will have, because all the files, all the problem, all the issue will ultimately come to the General Office. So it's a very powerful position, like when Xiaobao, before becoming premier, during the Tiananmen events in '89, he was General Secretary of the General Office of the CP. These three people have served in Tibet. Deputy Secretary Ling Ligo, now he's minister. So my point is that all these people, after serving in Tibet, have got a promotion. Whoever does good in Tibet, good for China, not good for Tibet, and good for the party, gets a promotion. So is Yang Xuantang, and more recently, about a few months ago, she has been promoted as the director of the Youth League School. So there's many cases, and another case is Madame Liu Yandong, who was the director of the United Front when The first negotiation occurred in 2002 with Lodignari and Kesang Gyalisen. Now she has been promoted in the Politburo. She's one of the two ladies in the Politburo. I mentioned already General Wang Xiangping, who served in Tibet as a PAP commander. Now he's overall China commander of the PAPF. And General Zhang Shi, he was also serving a commander in Tibet. Now he has been a big promotion. There's a spelling mistake, it's Jinan, yeah, and of the military region of Jinan. So it means that next time he will make it to the Central Military Commission. So all these people who have been in Tibet, who have been tough with the Tibetan, who have done well according to the standard of the party, they get their promotion. And as I mentioned, three people in the Tibet delegation to the NPC are not Tibetan. Wang Guning I mentioned. Professor Ding Zhongling, who is deputy chairman of the Chinese Academy of Science, and one businessman from the China Unicom Group, one of the largest IT group in China, Chang Jiaobing. Three of them are members. So when Xi Jinping was asked, apparently when he visited in March of this year the Tibet delegation, he was saying that each of these three people represent some area where China wants to invest, like they want all the big business to invest in Tibet, in infrastructure and development. They want science, they want because of the climate change and the whole environment that Professor Zhongling from the Chinese Academy of Science will be representing, and of course he will represent the political aspect of it. Now I presume we can switch up this light here? Okay. That's the structure of the 15 members of the standing committee of the Tibetan Autonomous Region. So, Pema Choling, actually Pema Choling, I was asking some friend in here that he has not been in the press at all for the last 6 months. So I was wondering what happened to him, if he has been sacked or if he has been sick and everything. But he is only member of the Central Committee from Tibet. Now every day in Tibet press and Chinese press, Lobsang Gyatsen is inaugurating. He is today the main guy. You know, they have always that strict order when they come on the stage or whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's an order of precedence, and the number 4 is Wu Jingxie, and he's one of the 4 deputy secretary. Since 2 months, he's not in Lhasa. I mean, according to the newspaper, the website of the TAR, he is in Nakshu. So it means they are so worried about the situation in Nakshu. It means that particularly the party secretary in Nakshu is not able to deal with the situation, and Wu is constantly in Nakshu. I think one of the main guys, one who will make it in a few years' time in the Politburo, is Deng Xiaogang. He is looking after the security in Tibet. He is quite young and very, very powerful, and he's done so well for the Chinese once again that recently, 2 weeks back, the people from Xinjiang, from Urumqi, the party secretary from Urumqi came and visited Tibet to see all the grid system and whatever monitoring system they have put there. Now I just, so Gompo Tashi I mentioned. I just want to mention these 2 last cadres. Apparently they are born, they are Chinese, Han, but born in Tibet. Their parents or their father was part of the 18th Army who invaded Tibet in 1951, and these guys, relatively young, are born in Tibet. So I don't know if they are half Tibetan, because otherwise few of the Chinese leader can speak Tibetan. I think Wu may be speaking because he has been posted 39 years in Tibet, but most of them don't speak Tibetan. No? So this I will go because you know about the secretary of the party. So as I mentioned, I think today one of the most important or the most important deputy secretary is Dan Xiaogang. He is relatively young. He is also in charge of all the affairs with Nepal. He went to Nepal and he received all the dignitaries and is in charge of security. And Wu, who has been serving for many years in Tibet, is roaming around Nakshu. Yu Changchang visited thrice, I mentioned Khartse in January, Kalo in July, and more importantly, just before every July, August, the party has this conclave in Benahed near the sea. You know, it's too hot in Panchen. So just the days before, he went for 6 days inspection of Tibet. And one sign, you have to try to read signs. So one sign that the Chinese are not at all confident in Tibet is that they keep that visit totally secret. And only on the 7th of August, when he reached Panchen, it was published in the newspaper that he had been for 6 days in Tibet. So it's not like in India you get all these politicians cutting ribbon and giving speeches and everything. He visited, he met all the people. So their so-called inspection tour is really work to get to know the situation on the ground. So somehow I believe that they have quite a fairly good assessment of the situation on the ground. It doesn't mean that they will take good decision. That is another thing. So he went to Lhasa. It was the day that the big opera, Wangshen opera, was inaugurated, but in India I was thinking that the guy would have been officiating and inaugurating this thing. He didn't go, and he just met people. Du Qinling also visited, now he's in the general office. He used to be in the United Front director. I think the envoys have met him, but now he's in central committee and the general office, so he's a very powerful. And I mentioned earlier that Wang Zhanghui, who is very close to Yu Changchang, when he is actually the secretary of the Xinjiang small group. They have a small group for Tibet, they have a small group for Xinjiang. So he visited in August Tibet, and he went to Ningxi. I think because the other leader didn't go to Ningxi. Of course, they're using the Panchen, Lama, Gyalisen, Norbu. But as I was telling my friend yesterday in TPI, I think this time it was very discreet, the visit. For example, he stayed for nearly 3 weeks in Tashilhunpo, not in Tashilhunpo, in Chigatse, and he was not staying in Tashilhunpo. He was staying outside the Tashilhunpo in all summer palace of the Panchen Lama. He went only for a couple of hours to Tashilhunpo and without any grand reception and everything. So my reading is that China is not fully controlling that Gyalisen Norbu. So this I will, how long I have?
You have 2 minutes.
Okay. So you know that there is only one Tibetan in the Central Committee. And if you look at the armed forces, like just a few words about the Chodak, who is the party secretary for Lhasa. Yesterday, he inaugurated the Gedon Chapel's museum. So China is on the they are trying to recuperate many of the Tibetan feature, and Gedon Chapel really represents something very special for Tibetan, you know, modern mind and everything, and they are trying to use it. They have built a 3-story museum, and yesterday Chodak, they call Chala, is inaugurated it. Central Military Commission, again, there is no Tibetan. There were 67 members of the PLA and PAP in the Central Committee. There is not a only 100% Han, not a single minority represented. It means how much confidence they have in their so-called minority. So that was for the next talk. Two military regions are looking after the border with India. One is Chengdu, and the other one in Lanzhou. So it's that he used to be in the small group of Tibet, generally young Jinshan, and last week there was this joint military exercise between India and China, and they say that the purpose of the objective of this military exercise were anti-terror. So I wrote that anti-terror against whom? Against the Tibetan and Uyghur. It can be only this. But he is the one who officiating and received the Indian general who went there, and he is really a person looking after all military affairs. There is a new person, General Shu Yong, who is the commander of the Tibet military district. That's, I go fast. Just a word about the Langshu military region and the Xinjiang military district, which faces Ladakh. And you know about the incident, the constant intrusion into India's territory, and the incident near the Karakoram Pass in Depsang Plain. That General Pang Yong was the army commander, and I had always some feeling that he had taken the decision on his own without referring to Lhasa. Now, last week when that car rammed it into some tourists in Tiananmen Square, the day after he was sacked. But actually he has nothing to do with law and order and the problem with whatever is happening in Xinjiang with the Uyghur, and if there is, they say they are terrorists and things like that. He is only purely his army. So my reading is that he was sacked because of having provoked India. It might have been a deal with India to sign. You see, just the previous commander of the General Gao Hili, he died of a heart attack. So he was commander of the PAP in Tibet, and he was replaced by 2 months back by another general. So I think they have a very tough time also. I'm not going to cry or to, but I think it's a very tough posting also. So he was 54 only when he passed away. You see, it was at the time of all the, in Diru and also in Kardze, there was all the demonstration. Xi Jinping visited Tibet in July 2011. He went to Ningtri. And he said that he mentioned when he spoke to the Tibetan delegation, he mentioned that he knows that many of the now senior cadres in the Politburo and all have been linked with Tibet, and he said that he will probably continue to help us to stabilize the situation. That's the meeting he had in Jamba Bunso, Pema Choling, Lobsang Gyatsen, and and just a few words to conclude, because I have gone over. The main objective that he mentioned, Xi Jinping, at that time, was the maintenance of stability and leapfrog style developments. Means you provide development, you give more infrastructure, more road, you make the Tibetan wealthier. The increased GDP last year was 12%, while in China it was 7.5%. So you make the Tibetan richer and you solve the problem of stability. Unfortunately, for them, it has never worked that way. But he mentioned also that special characteristics of Tibet must be respected with even greater protection for its culture and religious faith, as well as continuous support for its rapid leapfrog economic development. Now, I don't know how much is going to be implemented, if it's just words when he met the delegation or not, but only the future will tell us if he can give another direction. And wow, Hyo Bang, when he visited in May of 1980, when he visited Tibet, if Xi Jinping, along with Hu Changcheng, couldn't give a new direction to the Tibet, or if they will continue the old way of more repression and more repression. Obviously, the more development will not help. But what I hope that sometime when they go for this inspection visit and they really seriously look at the ground situation, that they will realize. But I'm not so sure, because the past have shown that they have never realized, because for them, if they lose in Tibet, they will lose at the same time in Xinjiang, and they will lose also in Mongolia. So that's other implication that they have to take into account. So sorry to have...
Claude, would you make a concluding statement?
That is my concluding, that we have to... that plenum, that third plenum, which for 3 days last week, people had a great expectation, especially for economic reform. But I think they have limitation, because they have their own power struggle. You know, the big regional chief also have been overspending, they have been corrupt, the PLA is totally corrupt. So I think for Xi Jinping, they have studied in depth the collapse of the Soviet Union, and they are trying not to repeat the same thing. So their first priority may not be Tibet or Xinjiang, but to try to root out corruption, to make the people's life easier. You know, when people put petition, now they are beaten in Tibet or in mainland. This uku system of for migrant worker to work, where they have no freedom and no facility. So I think these are their priority. And the huge state-owned enterprise also, who are losing money and who are not efficient. And I mean, we know in India what means state-owned enterprise. You just look at the BHEL or DRDO, they are unable to do anything. So they want to clean up this first. And of course, the second small group I mentioned that they are going to form on national security. So these will probably have consequences for Tibet. But I'm not sure that Xi Jinping has full control, though he has taken, it went much faster than Hu Jintao. He became chairman of the CMC, he became president in no time. But still within the Central Committee, it will depend how much he can bring reforms. But Tibet may not be the first priority.
Thank you. Thank you, please. Claude Arpi has completed his presentation. This morning's title, once again, is called Chinese Leaders and Ministries, Who Makes China's Tibet Policy? I'm now giving opportunities to all our friends here who might have questions to the speaker. Please. And the microphone, please use the microphone.
Can I sit?
Sure.
Good morning, sir. I have 3 set of questions, and I'll be very brief. Okay, my first question is, in your presentation, you said that the policies on Tibet has been framed during the work forum. But then work forums are held only 5 to 10 years. So does it mean that they don't make policies during the, in between? First question. And second is...
Shall I answer one by one? Or I have to take notes? I have to take notes.
It's 10 before 12. Allow us, if there are questions, we'll go until 12:15. If there are no questions, we'll proceed faster. Thank you.
Oh, okay, can I go to the second question? Okay, my second question is, during the second to fourth work forums, they have proposed infrastructural projects amounting huge amounts of dollars. But then in the fifth work forum, they have not proposed any projects as such. So what could be the reason? And because most of the infrastructure projects is still going on in Tibet. And the second question, the third question is, from first to fourth work forum, all the the policies has been confined only to the Tibet autonomous region. And in the most important selling feature, during the fifth work forum, it has tried to include all the 3 traditional provinces of Tibet. So does it mean that all the policies framed during the first to fourth work forum is not implemented beyond the Tibet autonomous region? Thank you.
The first one was about work forum of in between work forum, no? I think they try to take a decision for 5-10 years and stick to it, because the advantage of the work forum, it's such a large meeting where everybody is represented, no? So they cannot have such a meeting every year or so. So they take, considering the situation at that time, they take a direction and they try to implement it after. So I don't think they can keep changing in between and like that. So the second question was about
What's the infrastructure?
Yeah, I think the infrastructure continues. The point with the infrastructure, that this infrastructure is always a dual use. It's a use for the PLA, for the army. Like, for example, when they do all these roads in Nyingthi, or the airports, the 5-6 airports now with Nakshu very soon, or the train, next few months the train will reach Chigatse. This is an ongoing project which will use for the civilian, for stabilizing the situation, as well as for in case of a conflict with India to bring troops. So, but it's very clear that the infrastructure and all, even if it's not mentioned precisely, probably because at that time of the 2010, the situation was very acute after 2008. The stability issue was very acute, so they have insisted more on stability than on infrastructure, as in any case it's going on. When Yu Chensheng went to Lhasa in August, 2 of the main participants, people who are senior cadre who are accompanying him, were dealing directly with infrastructure. And about larger Tibet, I mean, I think it's mainly due to the riots in 2008 of the March. Suddenly they saw that map of Tibet, and I have noticed nearly or immediately after, in their website, their Tibet China website, Tibet China online and all, they start including news. And if you look at the main website today, they give news from Sichuan, from Gansu, from Qinghai. They will give you from Labrang Tashigil or from Kardze or from not only restricted. So it's true that in their mind, the riots, the unrest in 2008, March, April 2008, has really changed the map of Tibet. In one way, is what His Holiness has always been asking, that the three regions should have one policy. And without saying it, and they will never say it openly, but it's like an admission, the fact that the Fifth Work Forum that included also Tibet, what they call Tibet inhabited area.
Anybody else want to ask questions? Please rotate the microphone. Yeah. Hey, use the microphone, please. Just behind you.
I would like to take you to the third plenary session that has been recently concluded. So, in your presentation, you said the areas of the discussion was Economic Work Forum and national security. So, I mean, the purpose of the National Security Work Forum was to monitor demonstration and protests. So, what, in your opinion, do you think that China will deploy more army in Tibet? Do you think the situation in Tibet will become more repressive?
Thank you.
I think, frankly speaking, I don't know. And after the the third plenum, they have published a small press release, which, if you read the words, it's very vague. You can understand whatever you want. So it's very good for the journalist and for the commentator to give their own interpretation, but nobody really knows. Now, even if you take the NSA, the National Security Advisor, the post of, and a small group for the National Security Affairs, it doesn't know, it doesn't say if it will include foreign affairs or only internal affairs. It seemed that Jiang Zemin, when he was he went to, in the 90s, to Washington, and he was very, very impressed by the role of the NSA for coordinating all national security issue in America. So at that time, I think maybe the seed of an NSA came. Now, Xi Jinping probably has pushed that new thing, but we still don't know. The commentators do not agree. Now they say that for the first time, usually after the first communique, it takes months to publish the full text of their decision. So today morning, they say that it will be published in 10 days, 1 week, 10 days, we will have the full text. So it will be maybe slightly clearer than that small press release. So at that time, we may know if they will increase. But they don't really need NSA to increase if necessary. You know, I think one important factor is the infrastructure. Now there's a road to Methok. If they want to bring a PLA to the border, it's much easier than it was previously. Same thing when the train will reach Gyalisen early 2014. It will, if there is a issue, law and order issue, it will make it much easier. And I think one of the objective of to have very quickly an airport in Nakchu, it will be also in 2014, it's also to try to so-called stabilize the area, which is now in turmoil. And they don't know how to solve it, because if they have to send one of the deputy secretary for 2-3 months, I don't know, those of you who follow I mean, you know better than me, most of you, because you can follow the Tibet daily and everything. But if you read the paper, when you realize that the deputy secretary for 2-3 months is there, it means they have a big problem, no? Did I answer? I think.
Okay, next, please.
Hello. Thank you very much for your time. My question will be similar to what Chunzomla asked. I saw in your presentation there was a comment about an army general or commander who acted without any prior sort of order from the center, acting on his own. So I would speculate that many of the such sort of repressions that we have seen in Tibet and in areas, somehow the local leaders and the local politicians, the party secretaries would act on their own without any sort of explicit order from the central. Now having the fact that we have now the Security Council at the after this third plenary, and of course, like you said, we don't really know what is going to be, what it is the stated sort of responsibility of this Security Council will be. But somehow, have you seen some kind of willfulness from the Xi Jinping in order to, in terms of sort of centralizing the kind of securities sort of maybe policies that he would want to practice?
I think we'll have. Sorry.
Please go ahead.
We'll have to wait for this National Security Council, what small group for national security, what is its composition. Usually these small groups are for coordination. They take people, because it's true what you said at the beginning, that very often each local boss is doing his own thing. One factor also, I very briefly mentioned that the corruption within the PLA. You know, the first thing that Xi Jinping did in January, February of 2013, during their spring festival, is to ban the banquet. The wife of the PLA general were not supposed to spend lakhs of rupee buying things. The plates of the car, they give 10 or 20 different car, Mercedes, Ferrari, Maserati. You cannot use a PLA plate. It means that before they were using, means there was so much corruption inside the PLA. And also so much, Beijing is very far from Xinjiang. So that General Yang was sacked. I mean, God knows what he was doing. What made me think that something has happened, that Prime Minister Manmohan Singh each time, I mean, he's quite weak in dealing, he's very weak in dealing with China in general. But he said, no, that Depsang incident in 16th of April is due to a local issue. He used local issue. MEA also speak of local issue. So I thought that maybe some, and it happened just 2 weeks back that General Yang was sacked. So I put one and one together. But like everything in looking at China, it's guessing thing. There was the CIA wrote a very beautiful report that you should read. It was, I think, in 1974. 73 or 74, at the end of the Cultural Revolution. It's about the art of watching China. So there's 20 pages or so. I mean, I was telling Sampala that your divination is much more accurate than the art of watching China. So you can do mistake, or you can, even the best watcher do a lot of mistakes. So you guess, maybe you're right, sometimes wrong.
Thank you. Please.
Hello. Thank you very much. I would like to ask maybe just 2 questions. The first one is that since nothing is immortal, of course the Tibetans are not immortal, and China is not immortal, and definitely the Communist Party of China. So therefore a change is imminent, is a question of just time and the mode, how they will change. So I see just briefly on the spot thinking maybe 3 options now they have. One is just let it loose and it goes out, burst out like a wildfire without any control. So this is what I think the people are most afraid of, especially the common people in China. And the second one is that there is a gradual change starting from the independence of judiciary and the people's respecting people's rights, and that way slowly just a evolution of a democratic way or a peaceful building of a peaceful society in China, including Tibet. And the third option is to have a party system, multi-party system. So as His Holiness said that the Communist Party should be wise enough to walk aside or just retire very gracefully and then let people participate in the building of the nation. So what my question is, by watching, maybe using the tools of this is CIA bunch of pages, so what do you think that if they have these 3 choices, so which one would they be heading for in the next, let me say, the shortest time of 15 years? And the next question is that now this recently concluded plenary meeting, they have decided they are establishing one extra board or council or something like this for national security purpose. So, and also very recently, the guy in Tibet, Chinese General Secretary, Party General Secretary has said that we will cut off any sign of the Dalai Lama from the Tibetans. No speech, no pictures, nothing, nothing of the sort. So they said he will swear of every kind of connection. But of course, that could be physical. But on the spiritual level, on the mental level, nobody, even the gods, they will not be able to cut off the spiritual connections between the Tibetans and the Dalai Lama. So such drastic statements or actions, if they ever implement, do you think that this will encourage or this will compel more self-immolations in Tibet? Thank you.
About yes, I think nobody is immortal, and CCP is not immortal at all. I mean, if you look history on centuries, you can really see that all big empires, look at the British Empire, was so powerful, and in 47, and now England is a small island. It's Putin who said that. They were so very upset, the British, but he said it's just a small island, so maybe China also will explode. I mean, I know that many people have predicted the collapse of China. They have written books, and they are selling their books much better than me, but it's something which sells very well to say that China will collapse. I think China they are quite intelligent, and they study scientifically the history also. They have, I mentioned about the collapse of the Soviet Union. They asked the Chinese of social science to do very in-depth studies. So these 3 options, they know which one they can take if they want to. If they let loose, they know that it will follow the Soviet model, and it will collapse. Xi Jinping has mentioned very clearly, we cannot let loose. The multi-party system, he said it's an invention of the West, of the America. It's not suiting China. So we should have a model with Chinese characteristics. So their third option is to keep the party as it is, but to purify it, to cleanse it, to remove all the hills, and to do what he calls this mass line program, is to go to the people, to listen to the people, and to respond to their aspiration. But now, if it can, I personally have strong doubts that it can work, because it does not work in the early days of Mao Zedong. After it became very corrupt during the Cultural Revolution with Mao's wife and all these things. So it's clear that Xi Jinping is following that he wants to preserve the party, purify the party to make it an instrument for the people. If you look in China, everything is people's. People's National Congress, People's Liberation Army, People's this, people that. Here we have Rajiv Gandhi University, sorry, not Sonia Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, and we use Gandhi in India for everything. Here they use peoples, but actually they are cut from the people. They're totally cut. But I think it's very old. From in Yan'an, when they were in the cave, Mao Zedong, already there was, you know, different treatment for different leaders. And one time there was one dissident in the 40s, when they were in the cave, who wrote, why should the senior party leader Mao Zedong and all dine and wine and dance? They love dancing at night, while the ordinary soldier had hardly enough to eat. So already there was that. It has never been pure, the party. You cannot have a nomenclatura, very strong people to be pure. So I feel it will have to collapse. Let's hope that immortality will be very short, and Tibetan will have some freedom. And about, I think it's Xu Weisheng, you must have that quote that you mentioned. But at the same time in China, there is also other opinion that Professor Jin Hui from the party school, she published that article, that interview in Hong Kong, in which she said that we have to work with the Dalai Lama, that the golden urn, implying that the has been manipulated, the golden urn will not work for the, we don't want two Dalai Lama like we have today, two Panchen Lama. So what you mentioned is one view only. And Xu Weisheng, if it's, that quote is from Xu Weisheng, now is out of power. They have he has been replaced in the United Front. It's not him who will deal in the future with the His Holiness envoys. And but this guy to come in the press, you know, they put very radical. They have a set of retired generals also, who put very aggressive thing against Japan or India. So they are master China to use this type of people, you know, to show the extremist views. It doesn't mean that all the leadership believe in that view.
Any other questions, please? Okay, we have 5 minutes.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
I'm glad to hear you once again. I'm a little bit curious to know your scholarly opinion that His Holiness has recently commented that the number of liberal-minded amongst the Chinese educated people is increasing, and this isolates the hardliners in the Chinese leadership. So what do you think, how much impact this positive change could bring to the, or among the Chinese leadership while formulating the policies on Tibet? Thank you, sir.
I think the vast majority of the people, I mean, I'm not speaking for the few people that have come to Dharamsala and His Holiness has met, or here or in America or in Europe. The vast majority of Chinese are totally uneducated about Tibet. They don't know about. I'll tell you a small incident. In Oroville, in our school, we have 2 Chinese, young, 10 and 11 or something like that. Around Lhasa, we had invited the Tibetan Children Village, 15 kids from Suja school. So they were invited to the school to speak with, to all the students. One Chinese, one young boy, he refused. He said they don't like us. We don't want to. I don't want to attend that session. one young girl, she was very courageous, she came. And these Tibetan, the boys and girls from Suja, they start telling their own story, you know, how they escaped from Tibet. And that Chinese girl, she started crying. She said, no, it's not true. I've never heard this. I always, because she came only recently to Auroville. She's been for 10 years maybe in China. She said, I've never heard this. This is not correct. It is, Tibet has always been part of China. And she started crying. I didn't know that we did this to the Tibetan. So it became very dramatic. The young Tibetan, they start crying also, and after they kiss each other, they say very sorry, they even say sorry and everything. But and they invited that girl to come to the Tibetan pavilion to visit the exhibition of history of Tibet. So my point is, in school, the 19.99% of Chinese, they have only the image of Tibet, what they are told by the party. And yesterday I gave that presentation in a museum. These 15 millions of Chinese who come to Tibet as tourists, they will also get only that vision, because all the museum, all the exhibition, everything is done, or the Wensheng opera is to project Chinese version of history. So I think it's a very small minority, but hopefully slowly by slowly they will get more educated. But today, apart from certain intellectuals, very rare, or some professors like that, mostly they just have to swallow the party's version of history and the party.
Okay, looks like we are up with the time. You've used all the time. Concluding remarks from the moderator. Claude Arpi, thank you very much. You've taken us quite appropriately and sequentially, starting with the structure of the Chinese authorities who were relevant to the Tibetan decision-making for the Tibetan people, State Council, structure of the CCP in Tibet. And what we notice from the presentation is, even though there may be a number of members in this CCP in Tibet, there are hardly few Tibetans in it. To name a few, Pema Chuling, Lobsang Gyalisen, Norbu, very few Tibetans, and they too with hardly any decision-making powers. It seems, therefore, what we have been hearing in the past 20 years still remains. Nothing has changed in terms of who makes the decisions. The topic today, who makes China's Tibet policy? It's quite apparent that the decisions are made by decisions affecting the Tibetan people inside Tibet are made not by the Tibetan leaders, but by Chinese leaders. What I liked about our presenters, some of the words that I probably will not forget is Yu Zhang Zhang. Perhaps we should be using Yu Zhang Zhang, the one that you have used.
Yeah, you have to give me a Chinese class to pronounce.
I think from this talk, what we take from this talk is the most recent plenary that was held. appears to be putting some groups together, maybe one or two groups together, in the name of reforming the country and stabilizing the country. In other words, in the words of the author of this speech of this morning, is controlling the people, controlling the provinces, controlling the people who are more rebellious and troublemakers. Claude Arpi, on behalf of the civil servants who are gathered here, as well as those who have not been able to attend, I would like to thank you very much for taking your time and making the presentation. On behalf of the CTA, we would like to thank you very much, please.
Thank
From the bottom of our heart. Thank you very much.
I think it's it's not easy, even if you take it from the point of view of Xi Jinping today. Like when he came in power last year, he said he will stop the labor camp because he knows his own father suffered so much. He was a 9-year-old kid when Xi Jinping in '62 September was sent to this prison and imprisonment and labor camp. So one of the first things he said, he will stop this labor camp. Now after 1 year he has not been able to stop it, and still there's a lot of discussion. So it means that even if there's a will at certain level of certain people to change, it takes time, and there's so much lobbies and power struggle that it will take time. Okay. But immortality, we should shorten it.
Once again,
shorten it.
thank you for that last remark. Thank you. Thank you.